Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 48 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. I'm your Boogeyman. That's what I am. Are we with it? Is Stephen really the king? Join us as we go into our first author spotlight as we get into the It remakes and Stephen King's newest adaptation of The Boogeyman. And warning, spoilers ahead for anyone who hasn't seen this movie. It's been out for what? 2 weeks? 3 weeks? The time of recording?
I mean, it hasn't been out for that
long. So yeah, I mean, this is our first author spotlight. I'm excited that we can do stuff like this, and clearly, you know, there's the Dollar Baby program with Stephen King, where we can get into all his movies that have been made. And I think we should do a director and author spotlight with Stephen King for the ones that he directed, as well as, you know, his short stories and stories.
Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So let's get into this. For anyone who doesn't know, the Boogeyman is based off of his short story that is literally 12 pages long. And we'll get into that story a little bit when we discuss the movie as well, and kind of just go into the plot differences from the story into stuff like that, because obviously 12 pages is not a lot to go off of when you make a horror movie, as we discussed with like H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe early on in this podcast days.
Very early.
Yeah, like first or second episode.
Right.
So yeah, we'll start off with it. You know, we did pick out kind of the newest, or I guess, things, but these are about creatures in the dark. We will get to Pet Sematary and the Firestarter remake at some point in time, which is going to involve heavy drinking because those are awful.
Yeah, well, okay, we can even it out. We can have the original, then the remake for both of them.
Yes.
So it'll be half and half.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. So we'll start off with It. And at that time, you know, they're like, you know, we don't call it It Chapter 1 because that's not its title. We didn't get Chapter 1 until the, you know, end credits, essentially. And yeah, it starts off, and what I think they did interesting with these movies as opposed to the TV series from 1990 is they really split off the kids section and the adult section, as opposed to having it interspersed with everything, as I said, as they did with the miniseries. Yeah, and we kind of start off the movie with good old Georgie, right? Bill, it's pretty rainy out. His older brother Bill, who is I'd say the main character of these.
Yeah, the ringleader, where he ends up being.
Yeah. So, he's making a paper boat, and he immediately puts like sealer on there or glue and goes, okay, it's good to go.
Wax. He puts wax.
Which I think would still be not enough time to go float your boat down the street rivers. But Georgie, in his iconic yellow rain jacket, his slicker, whatever you want to call it, right? And, you know, in Derry, Maine, which has the world's largest sewer openings.
Well, that's built for a reason.
Right. And this does take place summer, or, you know, early spring and summer of 1989.
Now, see, I have a problem with this.
What's that?
I was still alive. Okay, so like they're talking like this is ancient times. This is 30 years ago, and it's like, man, I was a kid at this time. I remember 1989. Like that sucks. Like I mean, I was very close in age to these kids in 1989. I think in 1989 I was like 11.
Yeah, I mean, I was closer to Georgie's age, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, because they're like middle school. They're like 13-ish. But yeah, I was like 11, so I'm close, but not quite.
Right, and the original book came out 85, 86?
Yeah, the original book, the kids like the flashbacks were in the 50s.
Right. And in the TV series, because that took place in 1990, so it was 1963, which is still a problematic time when it's the book or the original series. Now they just kind of portrayed Derry as a say hick town almost.
I don't know. It's got a lot of infrastructure. I mean,
yeah,
it seems that it's like it's like a small town, but like a small town, a well-to-do small town with a lot of infrastructure.
But they also have the other side of the train tracks areas.
Well, yeah.
We are introduced to Georgie's floating his boat down the water. It gets into the sewer drain, and then we get Pennywise the clown. And I just gotta say, I'm not saying Tim Curry did an awful job. I think Tim Curry did a fantastic job. I think Skarsgård did a better job.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did too. I mean, obviously he won awards for the performance. I mean, no prestigious awards, but yeah, Bill Skarsgård is, I mean, kind of like widely regarded as being like great in this role. I think like everybody says he was pretty much like the standout of this movie.
Yeah, and there's tons of breakdown videos, stuff like that. Usually Pennywise has yellow eyes, but Georgie has blue, and you kind of see that change in Pennywise's eyes to help match Georgie's to make him seem more inviting with the clown in the sewer.
Right, and the whole the one eye looking in the other direction type thing.
That's practical because he could do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say he can actually do that.
Yes,
so they don't even need to do CGI. He just does it.
Yeah, I mean he has a naturally big forehead as well, and they just kind of accentuated his looks.
Yeah,
which was amazing that it worked as well as it did. It's let's face it, Stephen King adaptations have been notoriously bad for a lot of them.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the Tim Curry version was great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Tim Curry was talked about as being great in his role as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I think if you compare the two, I mean, I guess it's you say the ones. I think Bill Skarsgård is a bit darker, but I think the tone of the movies is a bit darker because it goes closer to the book, and the book is pretty dark.
Right, and I think the problem was, especially with the TV series, it was a TV series, right?
Yeah,
so you couldn't go hard R.
Right, yeah. So yeah, there was no like swearing. You can't get too like graphic or bloody. So I think Tim Curry did great for what limitations he had, and I think that this is kind of just like Pennywise unleashed, and I think Bill Skarsgård did a great job.
Yes. It's almost like comparing, the Jokers with Jack Nicholson versus I can't think of his name.
Heath Ledger.
One's very much darker, one's more comical.
Right. But in the constraints of their own films, they both did great.
Yes.
Yeah. They're just different tones to the films. That's all.
Right. So yeah, and as a big difference as opposed to Georgie just disappearing, his Pennywise's mouth then does come unhinged. We see like shark's rows of teeth, and he promptly bites off half of Georgie's arm, and Georgie bleeds to death and gets pulled into the sewer. And kind of the end for Georgie, right?
Well, yeah, but yeah, I mean, to see a kid like flopping an arm stump around, spewing blood everywhere is like, okay, this is a bit darker than the It you've seen before.
Yes, that really set the tone. Really set the tone for this movie, and just a fantastic opening scene to do it too. But anyway, it's been a few months later. And then we meet up with the kind of losers club, really just more of Bill, Richie, Eddie, and Stan. Everyone else isn't part of the Losers Club at this point in time. This is kind of the core group of friends, the Stranger Things group of friends, if you will, before 11 joins them and other people. Kind of just getting bullied because they are, I wouldn't say different, but the mullet kid, Henry Bowers, is kind of torturing them, and to kind of also, discuss that. I think we're introduced to Bill, who's trying to figure out like the sewer system of Derry, and because they never found Georgie's body, and his dad gets really mad because he's like, "Oh, well, if there was a big wash and he got swept into the sewer system, based on this schematics and this essentially mock Derry sewer system, this is where the body would turn up." And so he's trying to convince his friends, like, okay, based on this information, I think we should go here and start looking for it.
Yeah. Also, the funny part of this is like, it's kind of a big scene where like the dad is like very upset, like, like, don't let your mother see this. Like, next time you're gonna steal something from my office, just ask me. Blah 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 blah. Exits the movie and never comes back.
Correct.
Like, never ever gets mentioned again at all. I mean, he's gone from both movies. So he has like this big scene where he gets like, Bill gets in trouble and then just gone.
Yes.
Never ever to be mentioned again.
Correct. Yeah. And then we are introduced then to, like I said, it's, Bill has a stutter. Richie is the mouth, right? he tries to be the class clown, and it really comes off as annoying with Finn Wolfhard playing that.
I'm not a huge fan of Finn Wolfhard, to be honest, but I think he does a good job in this role.
Yeah. I mean, he's no Seth Green.
I think he did a good job in that role.
Yeah.
I think he played it exactly the way he should have played it.
Yes.
Well, the newer version of him, like, I mean, the book version of him was more of for like he tried to do like goofy voices and impersonations.
Yeah,
I think this version of him is a little bit better.
Yeah, he's still the mouth, though. He's still the class clown.
Yes, definitely.
Eddie is, his mom's turned him into a hypochondriac, saying he's all these diseases. He's kind of afraid of everything. She really seems like the type of person that would be poisoning him to keep him sick.
Munchausen by proxy is what they call it.
That's the term I was thinking about when I was watching it.
Yeah, Munchausen by proxy is where the parent like convinces the child that the things are wrong with them, and they keep like medicating them and doing medical things to fix things that are not broken.
And then Stan, who just happens to be Jewish, like that's his trait, and that's really weird.
Yeah, that's his thing. He's Jewish, but I mean, Richie is also Jewish.
Yes.
But apparently Richie is not as Jewish as Stan. He's just the Jewish kid.
Well, Stan just happens to be the son of the rabbi. So, he has to follow that. So that makes more sense. We are introduced to then Ben, who is at this movie, the fat kid. That's his thing. He's also the new kid as well, who happens to like New Kids on the Block. That's kind of just a running joke. We are introduced to Beverly, who has the rumor of being the most promiscuous girl in the town, even though she's only kissed a boy. Really abused by her dad. I'd even argue sexually abused, because it's never outright stated, but very much implied.
It's weird. It's a weird way that they show it. The movie definitely implies that something weird is going on.
Yes.
The book specifically says that it is not, but it says that he beats her because he wants to. That is what he says in the book.
Yeah.
So it is, the weird tension is still there, but in the book he says he never actually, I guess molested her, but he beat the crap out of her because he was tempted to, and he thought that she was like the temptress tempting him to do so. Where in the movie it is not outright said, and it is very creepy, like
implied.
Yeah, it's I think it's worse in the movie, honestly.
Are you still my little girl? I'm like,
right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, what does that mean, man? I don't want to know.
And then Mike, who his parents died in a fire. He is really the only African American in the town.
Well, yeah, besides his grandpa, who has like 18, and that's it.
Who is the bounty hunter of Jason Voorhees,
right?
Yeah, and that eventually they are the Losers Club. They all have parents that are weird.
Right. I'm gonna. Okay, spoiler alert. This is one of the things I don't like about this movie is that they reversed the roles of Mike and Ben.
Yes.
And I don't understand why, because that was like Mike's whole thing. Like in the we're gonna flash forward a little bit. Mike's role in the second movie is he stays behind and he's the town librarian because he likes the history, right?
Right.
So in the first movie, Ben is the one that likes the history. Yes, Mike and Ben, they switched places. But anyway, like that was his whole thing, was he would come back with stories from his parents, and that's how they learned about like the ironwork explosion and the black spot fire and all that kind of stuff was like stories from Mike. And Mike was always the one in the library learning all about Derry's history and all that.
Yeah.
And for some reason they switched it with Ben, which is fine for the first movie, right? It doesn't really make a difference for the first movie.
Right.
But it does make a difference for the second movie, and it's just odd. I don't understand what they were like, why they would make the change in the first and then just like switch back in the second. Like if they would have kept that change in place, in the second movie, that would have been fine, but they didn't.
Right. So
they switched it back. So it's like, okay, so the one kid that was interested in history just stopped being interested in history, and then the other kid that had no interest in history and was like going to continue on his family farm ditched the family farm and became a historian and a librarian. I don't understand what happened. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then they like shoehorned this. I know I'm jumping ahead to the second one, but they shoehorn in this like, oh, Ben likes to build things in the second one that was never mentioned in the first one at all.
I mean, he had his diorama that Bev actually knocks into.
Well, yeah, but that was just to show his love of history, because that was the diorama of like the Derry whatever landmark, whatever the hell.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't get it. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead quite a bit, but yeah, it's just annoying.
Yeah, but yeah, we're going off of that is when Ben is being chased and got caught up by Henry, who calls him Tits and starts carving his name into Ben.
Right,
starting with the age.
A hell of a bully right there. I mean, usually this fuck with you, but he's like carving his name with a knife. We've gone beyond the pale here.
Yes. They also bully Mike saying get out of your town, which surprisingly
very nicely, considering what know they want to say.
Yes.
It's very heavily implied.
Right. And I'm quite honest, surprised they didn't. I don't think it's needed, but I'm just to show how much of a dick this guy and psychopath this guy really is.
I think they had like, their one African American character. They were like, let's not push it that far. Let's leave it at implied.
Right. I'm pretty sure it's explicitly stated in the book. Unfortunately,
it is.
Yeah. So anyway, he's getting carved up. He rolls down the hill a lot, like absurd amount, getting away from Bowers and the gang, who even goes, okay, this is absurd. We really shouldn't be doing this. Like, can we stop him? No, because he's that guy. They chase after him. Bowers loses his knife, which does come into, play later. And you realize that, he's afraid that his dad's going to find out that he lost it, which okay, he's clearly abused at home. And this is why he is the way he is.
Right. I mean, well, you kind of figured that when he's like, beating the crap out of multiple children and then carving his name in someone's like, okay, this kid has a messed up life.
Yeah, and he can drive, so he's probably what 2 or 3 years older than them.
Well, he doesn't actually drive. The other guys drive.
Okay, but he's still older, not much, just a couple years.
Yeah, right.
So Ben happens to flee to the point where they were at the sewer, and they're like, "Hey, we found the shoe of this missing girl." And Ben's kind of with them, and like, "Oh, you're dying. We have to go get you supplies." And they realize they found the shoe of the missing girl, and they kind of just go, "Okay." People tend to forget about stuff like this with the kids in town. They go, "Okay, now we have to go meet and get supplies and go see the creepiest pharmacist I've ever seen."
Yeah. Well, the one kid, the member of Henry Bowers' gang,
Patrick, disappeared.
Yeah, he chases him into the sewers and then ends up getting trapped by Pennywise in the sewers and dies.
Yes, he is viciously attacked.
Right. Well,
he sees like all the dead kids.
Right. Well, yeah, he's just kind of like a goon that follows Henry Bowers around and is really never mentioned again. Like, no one really cares that he's gone. He's mentioned a bit in the second one, but not a lot.
Yeah, his flyer's put over the missing girl's flyer.
Right.
By assume his mom? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like his story in the book is a little bit more messed up because he's like a budding serial killer in the book.
Yes.
He's got like a bunch of like dead animals that he keeps in that old like fridge.
Right. Yeah, the book is definitely more graphic.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, so they're gonna go get supplies. They realize they have like $3, and they're trying to get like Eddie's like, all right, we need like these 50 things to patch him up. Beverly is becoming a woman, and she happens to be at the pharmacy where she starts flirting with the pharmacist, who flirts back. And she kind of just, accidentally knocks stuff over, so the boys are able to steal things to help, fix up Ben. And she kind of meets them out there, and while they're there, I just want to point out that throughout this movie, this is a big Mike Flanagan level of things in the backgrounds. Because you realize if on multiple rewatches, or even the first or second, you see more of Pennywise as disguised as other people in the backgrounds. And we see it with Ben when he's in the library. We see Pennywise posters when we meet up with Mike as well, because they eventually help Mike as well, because he's getting beat up and bullied by Bowers and the gang. Yeah, and we realize, at this point in time also that Ben has a big crush on Bev because she's learned to write in his yearbook, which I have to mention because it does come into play later. Richie's obsessed with the original Street Fighter arcade,
which is stupid.
The game's awful.
The first one sucked. Like, if it was Street Fighter 2, I totally get it.
Right.
I totally understand. And I'm pretty sure Street Fighter 2 was out in 1989.
No, that was 92.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Whatever. Street Fighter 1 sucked.
Yes, it absolutely has. It's a pale comparison to any other Street Fighter game.
Any other fighting game, really.
Oh, that too. So yeah, that's all going on there, and then they're kind of like, I think is this where they decide to recount the tales of everything? Well,
yeah, they find Mike, and they chase them through the woods, and they finally fight back against Bowers the rock, and then after they throw the rock, that's where they like bond as the actual Losers Club with all the members.
Yes.
And then that's when they start talking about other things, and then that's when they decide to try to research further into it.
Right, which is, as you said, Ben has all the stuff about the town, but the kind of things that we see is Mike sees his parents burning alive, with all that stuff. Bev has the, I don't know how far did that tape measure go in the drain? Like 14 feet or something like that.
20. I think it was like 24. It was very far.
Yeah. And the bathroom erupts in blood. That's her thing, and only she can see it. Her dad comes in, doesn't see it at all. Bill sees in, arguably, I have to wonder, did he imagine the water? Because if your house had that much water in the basement constantly, that's an unsafe house.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was, because as we've seen, like, parts of the hallucinations can be like blood dripping.
Yeah.
On you. So yeah, I'm assuming that the water was part of that. So I mean, definitely the water in the basement, but possibly the water that dripped on his face too.
Yeah. And George is like, we'll all float down here. And they're just scare tactics. Eddie doesn't see anything at this point in time, because he makes the jokes like, oh, well, it must be only virgins that see it.
That's Richie,
sorry. Eddie sees the leper at the creepy house.
Yeah.
Because, he's afraid of disease stuff. Stan is when he's working on his bar mitzvah, his reading from the Torah, that he sees the painting come alive of like a disfigured woman. And then Ben was the balloon in the library basement, and the librarian.
Ben was the
undead, the decapitated body. Yeah,
right. He's like he's kind of like historical bad things,
right? Because he sees, like, he flips through like 50 pages of the book that keeps getting faster and faster, and he's like a decapitated head because like 88 children died.
Right, which is that's a crazy amount of children.
You think that'd be like all of them,
right? It's like all the children in the town. In
right.
1908, I would imagine 88 children in one town would be all of them.
Yeah. So yeah, they kind of learn about it. They start going through the history, and Ben's talking about how everything kind of leads to this well house, which happens to be that dilapidated house where Eddie sees the leper. Yeah, and then they're talking about it, and they go through the slideshow in the garage, and Pennywise eventually comes like a movie, kind of like, I don't think you've seen it, but Sinister, and comes through the projector and just scaring the crap out of them. If he can't eat them, he's scaring the crap out of them. And that comes into play later on in the series. We'll just say it now. He is essentially he's a demon or an other dimensional being that feeds on fear.
Well, yeah, I think he also feeds on flesh.
Yes,
but I think he like
it has to be
he primes them up. He primes them up, and when they reach a certain level of fear, then he eats them.
Yes,
right. Sometimes that happens right away. Like sometimes that happens the first time he meets them, and sometimes he has to do it to them multiple times to get them at that level of fear to do it.
Yeah.
So like the other like random NPCs that we see dying are just the people that get scared enough that first time to die. And then of course the Losers Club is, even though they are scared, they are not at the level of eating scared. Yeah.
Right.
They're working. He's working his way up to them, and it's basically as we see as it goes along. It's their strength of their togetherness, of their being one big group that can rely on each other, that gives them the strength to not be scared enough for him to eat them yet.
Right. Correct. Yeah. I mean, individually they'd been screwed.
Correct.
So yeah, and then they talk about they're going, like I said, they recant all this stuff. They help Beverly clean up the blood, even though they all could see it, so she's not completely crazy. And this is where we get into the cicada rhythm of every 27 years for a year, which is almost like Jeepers Creepers. Imagine that. Who's like Cicada Man?
Yeah, so it's like he like feeds on children until he's like had his fill, and then he has like a huge feast where some horrible bad event happens where multiple people and children die.
Right.
And then that's when he goes to hibernation for 27 years.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, they're going through all that, and they're like, okay, hey, we're going to go into this house. We know this. Based on the schematics, everything points to the well house, and they start getting not, I wouldn't say prepared. That's for the second incantate, right? Where Mike gets the bullet gun, not bullet, the spear gun, essentially.
Well, it's a bolt gun. It's a slaughterhouse bolt gun. But yeah, no, the first time they go in, they don't really get all that prepared. They just kind of go in, right?
Yeah,
just to see what's there, and then as they go in, they get kind of separated, and they all have their own kind of battles with their own demons, that are there. So of course, Eddie and the leper and Stanley and the painting lady. Yeah. So it's everybody has their own individual things. Everybody does all that. So they all fight their own individual demons, and they all kind of come back together. And then Pennywise attacks them as himself. And then Beverly hits him with the spear thing.
But not before, Eddie breaks his arm.
Correct.
Stan gets bit in the face. He's almost getting eaten at that point in time.
Well, I think, no, that's later on. That's the second round is when he
gets second
bit.
round. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, as this where they also have the three doors of, scary, very scary, not so scary.
The first one, yes. in this version, yes.
Yes. Yeah. So they're okay, and that's as you said, they get split up, and he's just trying to pick them off one by one. But we kind of see as they are together, they have enough strength to at least attack him. They realize, okay, well, he can be hurt, and that's the big piece of this, right? Is that he can be hurt, and they strength together. They realize that, but he wants to, Bill wants to go, and there's okay, I think Georgie's still alive, which has been almost a year at this point in time. No, and there's we have the third act falling out, where everyone's no, we can't do this. Mike's mom or Eddie's mom comes and takes him, and it's okay, no, you guys are bad for my son, blah blah blah.
Bill punches Richie in the face. So everybody kind of separates and goes their own way, which I don't know how long of a time period is in between there, but I would say probably at least a couple weeks, right?
It's a couple weeks, because they're talking about that it's June during this time frame, and it's back in it's not until August that they start. They spend the summer separated from each other.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a month.
Yeah. And Richie likes playing Street Fighter, all stuff, but we see Bev trying to sneak out of her apartment, and now we have just another great interaction with her dad, which it might be the last time she sees him. I doubt she goes back to him after this.
The dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. Well, because based on the conversation they have at the end, yes. Because at this point she doesn't go back.
Oh, she goes live with her aunt. Yeah.
At the very end, right?
Yeah. But yeah, she was looking to sneak out. She confronts her dad. He's almost, do the boys tell me you're still my little girl? Do the boys know that you're my little girl? Explain you didn't tell my secret.
Yeah, it's it's uncomfortable.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. But yeah, and then she runs and hides in the bathroom, and then knowing that he's going to kick down the door, she hides in behind the shower curtain with the top of the toilet, which is pretty smart because that's porcelain's very heavy. So as he moves the shower curtain back, she smacks him in the face with porcelain. And we're oh yay, Bev is gonna escape and she's gonna leave. And then as she turns towards the door, Pennywise just appears and just grabs her by the neck, and then she's gone.
Yes. And that's catalyst for the Losers Club getting back together. Bill kind of goes, hey, he's back. He's got Bev. We have to go do something about that.
Well, yeah, Bill just like appears.
Right.
And then like goes in the house and sees the dad and everything. And then goes, oh yeah, she's gone.
Yep. And then we see, how Powers is afraid of his dad, who's a cop, a drunk cop, abuses him, clearly shoots around him. He's like, see, he's a coward.
Okay, Powers was an asshole. I think the dad was like a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Who was trying really hard to like keep his son in line, and then kind of like realized that he failed when his son became like a total piece of shit. And then he just like gave up, like, fuck this kid. I think that's what happened, because he doesn't come off as like just a bad guy. Like, he doesn't just punch him in the face or anything. Like, he's not just a violent, abusive person. I think there was probably a lot of mental abuse, but I think it was like over time. It seemed to be like Bowers was just a piece of shit from the day one.
Right.
And just no matter what he did to try to keep him in line, he just would not stay in line. And so over time, he just gave less of a shit and just started like threatening him to shut him up.
Right. Which is Bowers is a very typical character in every single Stephen King story.
There's a lot of times where Bowers is threatening other children, and then the cop shows up, like going, and all he has to do is like look at him, and he backs down and like goes away. Right. But he knows his kid's a piece of shit. I mean, he knows he's an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, he knows he's picking on younger kids and shit like that. Like, again, I think at this part, he just like realized he's failed. I think he did try. And then at this point, he just knows he failed. And again, like, what does he catch the kid doing? They're like shooting the dad's gun in the backyard.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, hold up that cat so I can shoot it.
Yeah.
Like, and then the dad comes up like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you don't shoot a cat. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And then so he takes the gun back, and what does he do? Because he's like trying to be a little tough guy. And so he just like shoots the ground near him, which again, yeah, abusive, shitty, yes. But he just goes, like, hey, don't follow him around. Don't listen to what he says. He's just a paper man. He'll crumble when you threaten him.
Yeah, he's just a scared little boy too.
Right. Again, he knows his kid's a piece of shit, and he's trying to tell these other kids, like, stay away from him. Don't be an asshole like him. He's not like, again, he could have just punched the kid, or beat the hell out of him or pistol whipped him or something, but no, he didn't.
Right.
I think he just, over time, he just gave up.
Yeah. Yeah. So this comes to play. He eventually comes back, and Pennywise is on TV in like almost a lamb chop-ish show, and tells him to kill his dad, which he does, and then kill them all, because he realizes that Bowers is like as evil as him, or a good henchman that he can manipulate and control.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is that whenever the TV is on in like this entire movie, it's that show.
Yes.
Of like a lady sitting with a bunch of kids around her. And if you listen earlier, I think it's when Eddie's mom is watching the TV.
They're talking about the sewers.
Yeah, she's talking like, it's fun to play in the sewers. I mean, it's like, so like it's been happening for the whole time. It's just weird that, whatever. But
right.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. But yeah, it's just one of the background things you see Pennywise doing the whole time.
Which makes for a great movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, Bill gets everyone together. Mike gets the bolt gun. They have, spears and weapons and all that stuff. They're ready to go get Beverly. They go down the sewer. They don't show how everyone gets down. Like, I was surprised how Eddie got down that, because like they had to stop in the middle before they fall down the entire well to go there. And just as Mike is about to go down, he gets attacked by a very blood-covered Bowers who's trying to kill him. And Mike kind of just like tackles him into the well, and we just see him go flying past, and we go, oh, that's the end of Bowers.
Then Bowers exits the movie. That's it.
Yes.
All that lead up to that, and then no more.
But in the process, he loses all his bolts for the bolt gun, so he doesn't really have anything other than one he just happened to reload because Bowers almost shoots him in the head with it. So yeah, they kind of just go down there, and we see Beverly. She kind of wakes up, and we get Pennywise just trying to entertain her, just trying to be a fantastic dancing clown that he is. And then she kind of just he opens his mouth, and she sees the deadlights, which come from inside Pennywise. I know the book has some really weird explanation that he's part. Like a space turtle's part of this too.
Well, that really doesn't come in until in this version it would come in the second one. I mean, obviously in the original book it's like these things are happening concurrently.
You're right.
But because it's the whole Dark Tower thing,
right?
Because all things serve the beam, as they say. And the turtle is one of the lines of the beam, and the turtle is the thing that governs like the Earth realm.
Yes.
So the turtle is kind of like the I guess the god, if you will, but like this end of our beam.
Right. And luckily we don't have the infamous scene from the book in this movie.
Dude, that scene is so bizarre. I mean, I don't understand how any like director could look at that and be like, "Oh yeah, I'll put that in the movie." No one will ever touch that. No one will ever touch that. I don't even know why Stephen King hasn't like written it out of his own book. Like, I don't understand what he was thinking to put it in there.
So the infamous scene we're talking about is the orgy of the kids before they go finish Penny away.
Okay. Even if like his whole thing is like, Bev has to be everyone's first love so that they're all together or whatever, right? Okay, why not just have like a kiss, man? That's fine. Like that's like your first love's kiss, right? That's okay. No, we're talking like full on like P to V intercourse with children.
Yes.
It's fucking bizarre. And like I said, and it's like an orgy because it's all of them. Like they all have to take 13, their turn. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yes. And they're 13. Yeah, that was...
so thankfully they just cut that part out. Then they just left the sewers and that was it.
That was... Yeah, like I said, thankfully that. And they go and realize that, Bev is kind of floating, and they look up, they see all the dead kids kind of floating. They're like, oh, this is what they mean. We'll all float too. You'll float too. So I think they're, Pennywise is still trying to get them. We have a little bit more shenanigans, and he kind of takes on the guise of Georgie, but this time Georgie has almost the yellow eyes again and realizes that, hey, this isn't Georgie.
He does have the one arm too.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that when they're attacking them, that we see Pennywise with the kid that disappears. It has the arm. He's like, it starts waving at him. I thought that was funny.
Well, that was when Mike was getting attacked at the river by Bowers before they showed up at the rocks.
Yeah, but I just thought that was funny. It's like perfectly done. So Ben kisses Beverly. She wakes up from it. Like I said, then he kind of like Bill gets taken hostage by Pennywise. He's like, hey, if you let me eat this guy, you all can go.
Right. Well, also like the whole poem thing, like Ben wrote a poem for Beverly, but signed it like your secret admirer.
Right.
And then, so like she loves the poem. She originally thought Bill wrote it, but she like asked him and he like had no idea what she's talking about. So then like when Ben kisses her to like wake her up, like she repeats a line of the poem and then he finishes it. So like she realizes at this point that Ben is the one that wrote it. Which is thrown out immediately.
Yes. Especially in the second one, or then this movie too. They essentially start they go, hey, no, that's not cool. You can't have Bill. And they start using their weapons and realizing the fear overcomes, even with like getting hit by, was it Stan that hits him in the head with the baseball bat?
Well, Richie had the baseball bat, but we also realized that Bill had the bolt gun, and Bill, I mean, I guess it's debatable whether he knew it was loaded or not, but Mike is clearly telling him it's not loaded. And then he fires it, and it hurts him anyway. And so that's when we get the whole thing of like, it's more of belief versus what it is. Right. Like he believed it was loaded. He believed it would hurt him, so it did.
And the closest to that in the TV series was, hey, this is batter acid from Eddie's inhaler, and it's that belief as well,
right?
Because that in the TV series, that's what they used, was the inhaler, and say, hey, it's batter acid. So it's the overcoming of fear that is the downfall of Pennywise. Pennywise realizes that he done goofed up, right?
Well, yeah, but it's the whole like, what do they call it? The ritual of chewed. But they don't actually mention that until the second one. But in the book, it's they do it both times.
Yes.
And it's bizarre in the book. I understand why they just changed it, because it's weird. It's like,
yes,
the two beings have to like bite each other's tongues, and then like they go into like psychic warfare. And then like whoever is like the wittier wins, or so. It's bizarre the way they describe it in the book, but in the movie it's more of just a very direct thing.
Yes,
it's just the power of belief,
right? And so essentially, Pennywise, his head kind of goes like, oh, okay, and he goes down the sewer, kind of disappearing, and they think, hey, we're good. Bill does see the raincoat from. Oh, Georgie is like, okay, he's dead, and the kids kind of start floating down. Like, okay, it's done. He will starve during his hibernation because he didn't get enough to feed. And then they kind of just go finish off their summon. I don't know how much time they say has passed. Because also, sorry, this is where Stan gets his face kind of gnawed on a little bit.
Yeah, and on their way to the Pennywise chamber,
Yes. Because let's face it, Stan was probably their weakest link, and that comes into play later, right? He realizes that he is the most fearful and not as strong as the others, I would say. After everyone gets healed up and recovered from battles, they're sitting around. It's like, I don't really remember much, but I remember us fighting it as adults, and, and a little bit foreshadowing, Stan asks, how do I look as an adult? The same, but older. Spoiler alert, now she doesn't know what he looks like as an adult. And so they do a blood oath. They're like, hey, in 27 years, if he comes back, we will be back. Bev and Bill kind of kiss, and it's just, hey, I'm leaving from Maine all the way to, I think, Oregon.
Portland,
so all the way, Portland, Oregon, yeah. He says, I feel this for you, and they kiss, and she's not with Ben. And chapter 1.
Right. And I don't get that whole, it's more of a complaint in the second one, but I don't get the whole, like, she loved that poem so much.
Yes.
Right? And then she finally learns who it was. Like, True Love's Kiss, like, woke her up out of the deadlights, right?
Yep.
And then, like, immediately thrown out. Immediately forgotten.
Correct.
Like, just immediately, like, nope. We're just going to avoid that plot point. We're not going to bring it up until, like, 3/4 of the way through the second movie.
Yeah. So, first thoughts, I when this was coming out, when I started hearing, we'll discuss it for the second one. I was excited. Like, I think the TV series of the original It was fantastic. I like that they did go interspersed between back and forth between kids and stuff like that. You can go back and watch it and realize there's a lot of decently named people in the miniseries, right? We had John Ritter. We had the dad from Sister Sister. We had early young Seth Green. We had a young, I don't remember her name, but she was in Ginger Snaps. She was Bev as a child. Yeah. I think the Bev as an adult was she was from the one of the Superman movies, not as Lois Lane, but the other one, and she was in Smallville. So a lot of decent names, and obviously Tim Curry. But when I heard that this was going to be an R-rated movie, I go, okay, this is kind of what we needed. But once again, Stephen King's stuff has been notoriously bad.
Well, it's not all bad. It's just very hit or miss.
Right.
His name does not necessarily mean it's going to be good.
Correct. However, I saw this movie. I'm like, ooh, maybe we'll start getting great Stephen King adaptations of stuff. Like, I started thinking, like, okay, what should they remake versus this? Not as opposed to this, but like I said, this was a fantastic movie, true to form. Not, like I said, not as weird as the books, but it is a great rewatch. I mean, I've seen it, I don't know how many times at this point in time. It's not a yearly thing, but this is probably the 4th or 5th time since I've seen this. And I go, I'm glad this is, R-rated and gory and really what we needed from this story. What about you? What are your first thoughts on this or in rewatches?
I think this is only the second time I've seen it. I mean, I saw it in the theater when it came out, but that was, it's 2017. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is only the second time I've seen it since then. I mean, when I saw it in the theater, I really liked it. Again, it was a lot closer to the book. But again, it's also weird because the book goes back and forth.
Right.
So it's kind of like the story is told, simultaneously in the present and in the past. And it gives you when things happen in the present, they give you, the background of the past and vice versa, to show why these things are happening. And it's done really well in the book. And it's just kind of weird to completely separate it out to where there is no adults at all. It's only the kid versions of them. I think they did a good job telling a coherent story with just them. But again, there's a lot of things that get left out, like the whole ritual at the end, because again, when they get to that point, they did the ritual the same way both times. But obviously this time they didn't really do a ritual the first time. They just fought him, and the ritual thing didn't come in until the second one, and it was weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's closer to the book than the miniseries was. The miniseries is good in its own right. Don't get me wrong, but it's a TV miniseries. It's like The Stand, right? The Stand, the TV miniseries is good. It's not great. I think it could be done much better. I haven't watched the new one yet. I don't know if they did a better job or not.
Not really.
Again, it was still a TV thing. It wasn't I think if they did an HBO version of it, I think it would be really good.
Yes.
But again, I think The Stand has a terrible ending as far as the book ending goes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's good. It's better than the first one. Again, the first one isn't bad. It's just not as faithful as this one is. But it's still weird that they completely separated it out, not fully having the second one planned out by the time this is over, which is odd. If they had both of them written and ready to go at the same time, I think it would have been better, but they didn't start figuring out what the second one was going to be until after the first one did well.
Yes.
Which is, you can really tell at certain points of the second one that they didn't really know what direction they were going in. There's things that happen. You're like, okay, why is this here?
Right. Do you think on your rewatches, do you notice all of Pennywise more through the backgrounds of everything? I did, especially in the second rewatch.
Well, I mean, yeah, you've rewatched it several times. This is only my second time, so I knew there was certain things to look for. But I didn't. Yeah, I probably missed a lot of it. Like I remember the first time I saw it, I remember something with that weird mural that was in the alley.
Yeah.
And then the second time I didn't notice it. I was looking for it and I didn't notice it. So like I know there's bound to be a lot of stuff that I didn't see the first time. So
yeah, no, it's a lot. I mean, there's a ton of stuff, ton of YouTube videos. One in particular that I won't name is that the librarian in the background. He's just gradually getting closer to Ben as he's reading the book. You know, it's the same person that goes, "This ruined the movie," and like another list, they go, "This was great." I'm like, well, I don't think it ruined the movie in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it, did anything. I think it was fantastic that you realize that Pennywise has been there the entire time. Through the TV show, telling people it's fun to play in the sewers, kind of like stalking his victims before he does anything more with them. And I think it's just kind of like a way for him to figure out what their fears are.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we figure out as we go along here, like he's Pennywise, or I should say accurately, the entity behind Pennywise has been like connected to the city since its very, very beginnings.
Yes.
So every little piece of the city he's like connected to.
Right. And I think the book talks about like he's been there for millions of years potentially, that he's been in just that ancient. He's like an elder god.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, right. So no, I think it's always this one, the first one especially, I think is always worth a rewatch. Second one, not so much, but I think everything was strong with the first one. And yeah, might as well just roll into the highlights. The acting, as we've discussed many times, kids in the horror movies don't generally go well. I think everyone did a fantastic job.
I mean, I won't say everybody. I would say Finn Wolfhard actually did a good job as Richie. I liked him. I think Bill did a great job. I thought Beverly was great. Eddie and Stanley were great. I think Ben is a little weak. The kid version of Ben is a little weak in his acting, like very kind of generic and light. And then Mike, I don't think really gets enough.
He's not fleshed out enough
as a kid, right? Because again, the one thing that really made him the interesting character in the book, they took away from him. So like he doesn't really have anything to contribute in the story of them being kids, which is again, it's just odd. I don't know why they did that. It's strange to me, but
yeah, I mean, all the adults are over the top, but not in a bad way.
No, like the adult versions.
Yeah. I'm saying no, their parents. Like you felt like they're losers at home and they're losers at school. Like you felt like they are just all, pretty much everyone has like a rough home life.
Well, rough, yeah. I mean, rough for different reasons and whatever. Yeah. But I mean, all kids have difficulties, as kids. But yeah, I would say they probably have harder than the average, right. Sure.
And listen, Bill Skarsgård, he was Pennywise. And you talk about like he's talking about interviews and stuff like that. And they said like they didn't let the kids see Skarsgård and what he was going to do beforehand, so it was more terrifying for them. And he got really concerned when filming that he actually was scaring them, and they're like, "No, we're good." He's like, "Oh," like, "Okay, I guess you guys are good actors." Like, wow, I'm just making sure that you guys are okay. And he seemed to get along with the cast and the kid actors really well, which I think is important when you do movies like this. Granted, they're older, but yeah, Bill Skarsgård nailed it. I think the essence of Pennywise really was that. Like, he was chaotic evil, right? Because he also has funny things, like he's still the clown occasionally, but also this ancient evil entity as well.
Right. Well, yeah, I think he just takes whatever form pleases him.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Pennywise struck his fancy, because obviously Pennywise didn't come around until like 1908, I think.
Yeah.
Is when Pennywise like made his real appearance, and like so he had some other appearance before then.
Right.
Since that 1908 version, he's like latched on to that as being his main.
Yeah. And clowns scare a lot of people, and scares Richie. He admits that too, that he's afraid of clowns. And, while they're going through the house and he gets, into the clown room, we do see homage to Tim Curry's outfit as Pennywise.
Right. Also, the funny thing is, who else is afraid of clowns?
Who's that?
Tim Curry.
Oh.
They could not have mirrors on set. For the original miniseries, he could not have mirrors on set because he could not see himself as a clown because he's terrified of clowns. So, like, when he was painted up as a clown, just imagine that he never looked at himself as a clown because he was terrified of himself.
And I will say that, is for his credit too, is Tim Curry is lost in that role. You don't know it's Tim Curry unless you really know it's Tim Curry. Like, the first time, I had no idea it was Tim Curry. Well,
he's done several roles like that, like Legend. You ever see Legend? Right. Like, you would not know that's Tim Curry unless you were told it's Tim Curry.
I mean, but yeah, just going back, yeah, but yeah, I mean, they also, Skarsgård, as we discussed with like Barbarian, he just seems to have that creep factor for some reason, and they just amplified his features to do it, and I think that worked really well for their iteration of Pennywise.
Yeah, it's just funny because the first thing I remember seeing Bill Skarsgård in was Hemlock Grove. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah,
and I was like, Hemlock Grove was not great. And like I was like, really, that guy? That's the guy that's going to play Pennywise? And I was completely wrong. I mean, he knocked it out of the park, but that was like the only thing I really knew him of at that time that they announced it anyway.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that.
So yeah, well, let's get into your highlights.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Pennywise is number one. I mean, I think he nailed it. I mean, not only the character, the vibe, the whole tone. I mean, everything is much darker than the Tim Curry version. Even like if you look at even his outfit, right?
Yeah.
Like Tim Curry's outfit was like the big, goofy, cheap looking clown suit.
The clown, yeah.
Right. And then like, this version is like the old school, like early 1900s, like clown, but like, weird, like dark ruffles and stuff like that, like clowns from that time period. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the original book, I guess, would probably be Tim Curry's would probably be more correct, because I remember I mean, the original book it's more set in the 50s, so like most of the things that he would take the form of were like horror movie stuff of the 50s. So you're talking like, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Werewolf, right, that kind of stuff. But there was always something on them to kind of show you that it was Pennywise, Pennywise version of it, and it was usually the pom-pom buttons that he had on the front of his suit. They would still be present on whatever form he was taking. So I would guess, if that's true, I would say the Tim Curry version is probably more correct.
Yeah.
But I do like Pennywise. This Pennywise version's better. I like the darker version of him. So like the more historically accurate, darker version better.
Yeah.
And I also thought they did a really good job with all like the creature effects. All like the like the painting lady, the leper, all the goofy like monster versions of things. I thought they did a great job. I mean, obviously Pennywise in his normal form is a lot more prevalent in the movie than in the book. And I mean, I get that, you want to make sure that, it's the same antagonist the whole time.
Right.
So yeah, I think they did a good job with that, but yeah, And I guess Pennywise in all his forms is my highlight.
Okay. Well, we roll into your low points. I know we discussed it.
I'm going to say my number one low point is Mrs. K's fat suit.
Yes.
That is the worst fat suit I have ever seen. It looked like she literally had balloons under her shirt. I mean, it was like that bad. It was like they didn't even try. Like, okay, I know they have good fat suits out there, and I know they have like, they're freely available in Hollywood. It's not hard for you to get a fat suit, and that they picked like the worst looking fat suit ever. It looks horrible. And then also my other low is just the whole Mike and Ben switch. I don't understand why they did that. Again, it's just kind of lost. Because again, like I said, Mike doesn't really get fleshed out as a kid because the only thing that he really contributes in the book gets taken away from him and puts on Ben. So then Mike is just literally just the token character, which is, a detriment. It's again taking away from what he had in the book. Now he has nothing. Like the only thing he brought was like he brought the bolt gun, which he ultimately didn't even get to use.
Correct.
It was like other characters got to use it. He just brought it. That was it. That was his whole character trait. Brings, sheep killing bolt gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree with that, especially as we get into, why switching of it makes no sense, and it makes zero sense as well. As I was watching the second one with the wife, she goes, wait, why is Mike staying? I'm like, well, because he does.
Right. Well, in the book it makes way more sense, but yeah, in the movie it's like, what? Like it in the first one, in the story of the first movie in chapter 1, it's fine, right? Again, Mike doesn't really get fleshed out that much, but the story still works out in the end, right?
Yeah.
Everything still gets done. And the second one, it really becomes a problem because now it's like they decided to keep with the original versions of their character, which is like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Like, this is totally reverse of what it should be.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a big thing. Like, that's a big change and unnecessary change. And I think they course corrected too, even though it's the same guy who did both of these.
Right. And it's odd because it feels like it's different. Like, it feels like a different person did it. I don't know why, but it does. It really feels like it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And, granted, these are shorter movies. I mean, the movies are long. The book is freaking long.
Yeah. I think it's 1,000 pages plus, I think, right?
Right. So obviously you can't go into it, but I mean, grand total, we have about almost 6 hours worth of movie.
5.5. Let's go 5.5.
It's a bit over 5 because the first one's like 2 hours and 15, and the second one's like 2:45.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think, yeah, the whole switching of things, that always bothers me a bit in these movies. Like, that's not the core of the character. And it bothers me, especially like The Shining. Like, they changed the room number. I go, what was the point of changing the room number? It's the room number. It's always been that room number in The Shining. And this is kind of just, I think, just a same thing of that. It's just like, why? There's no point of it. They could have fleshed out Mike much better as a character.
Yeah, because again, I think there was probably more to his character, and it probably just got cut out.
Yeah,
because I know that they were like, there was certain scenes that they had filmed that they had to cut out for length and stuff that they wanted to put back in, and they specifically said that one of the scenes that they wanted to put back in was the black spot fire, and I'm pretty sure that was probably a Mike heavy thing because he did see a little bit of the black spot fire when he was at the meat delivery.
Right.
Like all the hands that were coming out of that door. That was the black spot fire. And I'm pretty sure there was a lot more to that.
Right.
But
all right. So for our out of this week, for this episode, we are doing Monsters in the Dark because that is the theme for this, especially with the Boogeyman. So I'll just go first. Number of Monsters in the Dark out of 10. This is a solid movie. other than being like a 5-hour long movie, I don't think they could have crammed everything in there they needed to, but they really got the gist of it. Like, we didn't need to go that heavy into the gang of the Bowers gang, because the book gets very deep into it with all of them. This is, like I said, this is a strong outing. I'm giving it 9 Monsters in the Dark out of 10. What about you?
I mean, I did like it. I mean, it's definitely in rewatch territory. I wouldn't go that high. I would say 7.5 Monsters in the Dark.
7.5?
Yep.
Yes, I'm just rating so high just because of Stephen King movies. It is in the top echelon for most of them, for the horror movie side of things.
I mean, yeah, it is. But like I said, there's just some pain points that I didn't like.
Yeah.
But again, not enough for me not to like it, but enough for me not to put it in the top tier.
All right. Well, why don't you bring us into It Chapter 2 then, sir?
Sure. I know we've already kind of mentioned a little bit of what happens in this, but essentially, Chapter 2 starts 27 years later, which is, the hibernation sleep cycle for it. And then it starts off with a carnival in Derry, where we have two gentlemen that are obviously, in love on a date type of thing, right? So they're like, kind of kissing and having like a romantic date at the carnival, which is a typical thing that couples do. And then, a bunch of good old boys decide that they don't like that, and they basically just gay bash them. I mean, for lack of a better word there, right? I mean, that's essentially what
they bash.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what they do, is they like corner them and then beat them. And then one of them, which is, I guess, probably the more confrontational of the two, the one that's kind of like, spitting back at them, he gets thrown off the bridge after beaten like near unconscious.
Yes.
Gets thrown off the bridge, and then they beat the other one to the point where he goes to the bridge to go see what's happening, and he sees him like washing down like a white river, white water rafting river, right? So he goes down to like the shore to like try to get him, and then we see Pennywise on the shore of the river, like kind of dragging him out. And then as he's like, oh, good, somebody saved him, that's great. And then Pennywise just, straight up bites like his heart out.
Yeah.
And then, his nose screams, nobody's happy. And then we kind of realize that, he's back. So we get like Mike, who's the guy who stayed behind. He's like a librarian in Derry. He's taken over the library. He lives there, like literally lives upstairs in the library. And he goes to check out this, scene, and he sees, written on the bridge, come home, come home, come home, in the blood that I'm guessing only they can see.
Right.
Because it's the same blood that like Beverly had in the first one, to where the kids could all see it, but nobody else could. So I'm guessing it's only the people that it wants to see it will see it. So Mike, realizing that it is back, decides to call everybody to come back. Now, the thing is that as everybody else left Derry, except for Mike. Mike's the only one that stayed behind. So everybody else left. And the further away that they got, the more successful that they were. So everybody is leading a very successful life, because it is giving them that power to be successful, and also taking away their memories of what they went through as children in Derry. So the longer they stay away, the further away they are, the more successful they are, and yet the less they remember about them being there. So we get to Bill, who is now played by McAvoy, is a horror writer, kind of like the Stephen King stand-in, right? He's a horror writer who writes great books with bad endings, and he's now his books are being made into movies. And he's kind of like, trying to come up with a better ending for the movie than he had for the book. And we find out that his wife is the actress that's starring in the movie. And then he gets a call from Mike, and then like as soon as he's like, "Oh, hey, Bill, it's Mike," and he's like, "Mike who?" Meaning like he doesn't remember who Mike is, and Mike has to like kind of give him the breakdown of like, "Hey, yeah, you're from Derry, like I'm from Derry. Remember you said 27 years if it comes back, you have to come back. Well, it came back, you have to come back to Derry." And everybody they start feeling like really sick and really ill and super nervous. Like as soon as Mike says that, Bill starts stuttering again, which he hasn't done for like 20 years.
Right.
So then we get to Richie is a stand-up comic, who again he goes up on stage every night. He doesn't get nervous at all, and when Mike calls him, he literally throws up from being so nervous and scared, and then he forgets like his jokes. Beverly is in a like abusive relationship, which he escapes and just runs away from. Ben is a very successful architect. Yeah,
architect. Yep.
Who like owns his own architecture company, like builds skyscrapers and stuff. Obviously, very important type person. Let's see. Eddie is a risk assessment manager.
Yep.
Who like does insurance-y type stuff, and when he gets told about it, he gets a car accident. His wife is now basically like a replacement for his mother. I mean, like exactly like his mother. Stanley, I don't think they'd say what he was.
Because as an adult, he's
I'm just saying, but I don't think they even say like what he was doing. He was just like putting together a puzzle. So he's a puzzle builder in the future. Who knows? I don't know. We don't get more information. Who else is there? Is that everybody? I think that's everybody. Yeah, okay. So immediately when Stanley gets called and they say, "Hey, you got to come back," Stanley just kills himself.
Yep.
He goes into the bathtub and just slits his own wrist. Now, in the book, all he does is write "it" on the wall in his own blood.
Yes.
That's it. That's all we get. In this one, he doesn't even do that. But we get, like, everybody gets this nice letter at the end explaining why he did it, which is dumb, but whatever. I guess it's the conclusion of the arc. Is the letter is just basically summarizing everything, happy to give us the kind of sort of happy ending that we're looking for. Anyway, so Stanley is dead right away. Everybody else goes to meet at this like Chinese restaurant. And they go there, and at first they're like they barely remember each other, like they don't remember anything at all. And as they're like sitting there and talking, the memories are coming back, and they just start acting like the kid versions of themselves again, right?
Yeah.
They're like making fun of each other and acting like the losers club were before.
But now Ben's hot.
Well, yeah. Now Ben has lost a lot of weight. Ben is hot. Ben appears to look like they say, he looks like a Brazilian soccer player. He does not look anything like his original little fat white kid that he was in the first movie. Beverly is Jessica Chastain, who like everybody knows who she is. Richie is Bill Hader. I don't think I know anybody else. I mean, I know their face, but I don't know their names. But anyway, so they're all kind of like, getting in, remembering things. They understand about the it thing, but they haven't quite remembered everything yet.
Right.
And so Mike finally like shows them like, okay, it's back. Like things are dying. Like, I saw the message, blah, blah, blah. They're all kind of like blowing it off because they still don't remember everything yet. And, they basically at the end, they get in a big kind of fight. The fortune cookies, like, everybody takes a fortune cookie and it like spells out, looks like Stanley couldn't cut it.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah. But this is before they know he's dead. But they right after this, they find out that he's dead, and that's the joke. But like the fortune cookies, like little monsters come out of the fortune cookies, and they're like fighting them, kind of sort of.
Only they can see.
Yeah, that only they can see. Which we see like the waitress comes in and he's like smashing the lazy Susan on the table with the chair, and there's nothing there. But yeah, so. Basically at this point they're all like, yeah, screw that. We're all leaving. We're all going home. Like, this is stupid. Like it's nothing is back. This is all just like childish stuff. Cause again, they don't fully remember. So they go back and they kind of go in their own separate ways. And as they go their own separate ways, they start to have their old spooky experiences again, right? Like Pennywise is basically like visiting all of them and bringing back all the things that they were scared of.
Yeah.
So, Beverly has her dad. Richie is, what was Richie?
He was just afraid of clowns, but he got Paul Bunyan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Attacking
That's
him.
right. Yeah, Paul Bunyan attacked him, but that was like a flashback. Whatever. But that's what then he has. Bill, of course, sees the Georgie again. Eddie has the leper. Stanley has the deformed paint. Well, he's dead, but
Right.
and then whatever. Everybody kind of re-sees their own kind of thing again. So then they all kind of get together, like, okay, I guess you're like for real. But they're still not sure about it, and so Mike tricks Bill to going back to his apartment, and he gives him like drugged water. And he makes him basically have like a vision quest to see that.
Yeah, he gave peyote.
Yeah, whatever. He goes on this vision quest, and that's when he sees that, the Pennywise is actually like this millions of year old entity that has been doing this for, again, millennia. Like, who knows how long he's been doing it for. But he's also shown like this ritual that should kill it or at least imprison it for good. And it's called this ritual of Chewed, which in this version of it is the first time it's mentioned. In the book, it is mentioned, that both the kids and the adults knew about it, but again, it was concurrent in the book. The timelines are concurrent, but that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, like they got to like basically put the deadlights in like this little leather bucket thing. And so now that Bill has seen the truth, he's like, Mike is like, yeah, I had to make you see it because everybody will listen to you. They don't listen to me. So they basically go back, and Bill kind of like convinces them to come back. I think like Richie still tries to get away, but he ends up having another experience, and then he like goes, okay, fine.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, fine. We're all on board now. What do we need to do? Like, well, we all need to go find an artifact that will, one, bring back all your memories of what happened that summer, and two, is a thing needed for the ritual. So they all kind of, go off and do their own thing. So basically they all go off and they have their own, again, another like interaction with Pennywise individually. So Bill goes back to his childhood home. There's kind of like this other kid that's kind of like a stand-in for Georgie that's there. But eventually, whatever, he like has a meeting with Pennywise, and he ends up getting Georgie's boat back, the boat that was covered in wax and was put in the thing that Georgie was chasing. That's how he got captured by Pennywise at the beginning, and that is his artifact, and then he remembers everything.
Right.
Okay, Beverly goes back to her old house. Some old lady is like staying in her old apartment. And as she goes in, the old lady's like making her tea, making her cookies, and she gets like progressively weirder as the conversation goes, and she's like, all of a sudden she starts getting like weird accents, and she starts getting like weird like boils and injuries on her skin.
She gets naked.
Yeah, and then she goes to like get the cookies, and then she's like running past naked. I mean, it's like weird stuff. So anyway, Beverly goes into her old room and finds her old hiding spot and finds the old like postcard that has the poem that Ben wrote her, which at this point she does not remember who wrote it. Again, as we said last time, the information that she knows who wrote this was gone the second that it happened.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know who wrote it, but she still knows that postcard was important to her. So she gets that thing, and then the lady just like turns into like a big troll.
She's like the barbarian monster.
Yeah, she's like a big naked troll lady that like chases her out, and then Beverly gets out, and then she goes outside of makes it outside of the apartment building, and she looks up. The apartment building is like condemned and looks like it was burned down,
dilapidated.
Right. So, so like everything she saw in there was all just in her head.
Yeah.
They do go back to this one like thing. It was like I don't know, like a hidden clubhouse underground, which is where they got Stanley's item, which was like a shower cap that he wore because he was afraid of spiders getting in his hair.
Yes.
But this is also where we get like the thing where like Ben likes to build. Again, it was only brought up in this movie. The whole
Correct.
thing of like him liking history was completely thrown out the window. And now Ben likes to build. That's his thing that he is doing. It's bizarre that they did that. They reverted back to the original characters in this movie. I don't know why didn't just have Ben stay? Like why wasn't they could have literally just switched the characters and it would not have made any difference. It would have made more sense in your mind watching it, but it doesn't make any sense why they would switch back to the originals, but whatever. Yeah, so Ben, they go in the thing where, they show like Ben built this little clubhouse that they all hung out in. They got Stanley's, spider shower cap. That's his artifact. And they all kind of bonded over that whole thing. Ben goes back to the school that they were in. And he gets the page of his yearbook that Beverly signed because she was the only one that signed his yearbook at all.
Yes.
And it was like his whole thing was like Beverly calling him fat and like, basically not being interested in him romantically, which is, true. She didn't say it like that, but it was true.
Yes.
So yeah, that was his whole like, fear thing, was being rejected for being fat as a child. So then we get Eddie, of course, went to the pharmacy and she had another run-in with the leper. And his artifact ended up being his old inhaler. I don't know if it was his old one or just a inhaler. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But that was his thing. Is that all of them? Did I forget one?
No, that's all of them.
Okay. Yeah. So they all.
No, sorry. Eddie got a physical token from the Street Fighter arcade.
Oh, right. Yeah. So he went and got a token in the
old
theater. The old theater that he was in, that he had like a weird flashback of like trying to play with some other kid and then like the other kid accusing him of being gay for wanting to play with him or something. I don't know. It was a bizarre, weird thing, but Bowers was then, calling him, gay because he was like trying to play with this other kid, which was his cousin. Yeah. I don't know what was happening with that whole scene. It didn't make sense to me, but that was apparently his fear, and that was the token, and then it was over. So
his fear was being ousted as being gay.
Right. And then there was like, he had a scene with Pennywise where Pennywise is like, I know your secret.
Yes.
Okay. Which is, again, in the book is not mentioned at all.
Correct.
Like in the book, it is specifically mentioned that like Richie, talks about all the women that he's been with, which I guess doesn't preclude him from being gay. He could be hiding it, or two, he could be bi. I'm not saying not. I'm just saying like it seems like he was only that in the movie, and that was his secret, which I don't know why you would even need it to be a secret in 2019, right?
No, sorry, it's 2016 in this movie.
Or whatever.
I know. I don't disagree. Yeah.
2016, I don't think it was. I don't think you have to hide being gay as a stand-up comic. I don't think it would matter.
No.
But yeah, and then I guess he had a secret crush on Eddie, which isn't really expanded on, but I guess the kind of his epilogue, I guess, mentions that.
Yeah.
I guess there is a group of people that did like believe that was true in the book. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I think it's just
him and Edward
people trying to have something to have their representation in there. I understand that. I get that. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying I think that's a bit of a stretch, but
yeah.
So that's basically it. So they all come back with their tokens, and they're now all on board now because now they've all had their own, run-ins with Pennywise, so they know he's back. They know, the history of their childhoods and, all the memories that came up that we didn't see in the first one somehow. we now see in the second one, which, explains why the characters are the way they are. So they all decide, okay, now we have all our tokens. Now we have to go do the ritual.
Right.
So they basically get the bucket and they go down to, the big scary house.
Well, I'm sorry. Before this, we get Bowers in the sand asylum because he gets washed up. We see that gets washed up. He gets arrested by the cops. He gets put in the sand asylum, and he gets his knife back from Pennywise, saying you still have a job to do, essentially.
Right, and he gives him back his undead friend.
Yeah,
that can drive the car for him because apparently he still can't drive.
Right.
So, yeah, and then he goes around. He threatens. Yeah, I think he attacks and stabs Eddie in the face.
Yep.
Then Eddie stabs him back. Yeah, he attacks and gets in the way several times. He's like a secondary antagonist. Ultimately, doesn't matter at all. Like no. by the time the end comes around, he is gone and done.
Right. I just wanted to bring it up because like I said, Stephen King has a lot. Like Randall Flagg had his crony with the guy who was in love with what was her name in The Stand?
Oh, geez. Patty? Was it Pat or something like that?
I don't know. Played by, Molly Ringwald.
Right. Right.
But the villain always the villain always has a human crony that's just like pure just dick.
Well, yeah, it's usually they have some kind of like weakness or something that the villain is like feeding into.
Oh, is Franny, by the way.
Franny, there you go. See, I knew it was something like Patty. See, I was close.
Yeah. Close. I just remembered it. So,
But yeah, there was the dude who was really smart, but he like had a super crush on her, and she was not interested at all.
Right.
Yeah.
He was essentially a neckbeard. Let's face it.
Correct.
Anyway.
Yeah, incel. Right. Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. But yeah, because I just had to bring it up because, Bowers does come into play again. Briefly.
Yeah.
Very briefly.
Yeah, like I said, ultimately it doesn't matter. But yes, it should be mentioned because he was in the first one. So, yeah. So everybody comes back with their tokens, and they're all like, okay, we got to go do the ritual thing. So they all go down to, the place where they fought Pennywise before. Again, they're all kind of separated out and they all have their own fights inside the house. They get separated into all kinds of different groups. Like Beverly gets like trapped in like, an old bathroom stall and it fills with blood. Like Ben gets like, buried in a grave in the ground because an earthquake happens.
Not before getting like carved again, saying home with the H from his stomach.
Right.
They see Stanley's head become, essentially the Thing.
Yeah, it was like a direct rip off of the spider head from the Thing.
Yes.
That would say it. So it's like they get separated into like two different groups and they have like two big fights. There's like a scene where like Eddie like gets super scared and refuses to like stab the spider head thing.
Yep.
Because he's too scared. So like Richie gets slobbered all over. But whatever. It's like they all have their interactions with Pennywise again.
Right.
So they basically they all have their interactions. They get down to the place where they fought Pennywise before. They again have like another little confrontation, and then they realize that there's more to it. They find like a little like hatch. They go down in this hatch, and it's just like it's like a rock, like a rocky like tube.
I mean, arguably, you could say that's how Pennywise got to Dairyman. He arrived in that thing. Is why
he basically came out of a meteor out of the sky, and this rock thing in the ground is where the meteor ended up.
Right.
So he. They get all the way down to this, like, where the meteor comes in, and you see like this weird, like it looks like a metal splash mark where like the meteor is down there. So they all get down there. They all do the ritual. and it works. They get the deadlights into the leather bucket thing. But when they go to seal it up, like, one of his iconic red balloons pops out. They can't stop it. They can't pop it or nothing. So it eventually just comes out, and then, they have a big, long, drawn out fight with Pennywise again. Where they all get separated and have their own little things again. This happens a lot where they keep having their own separate fights because Pennywise keeps trying to separate them mentally.
Right.
To, like, try to pick them out one by one. But again, they still keeps, getting their together powers overpower him. And so, like, because like one or two of them will meet up with the other one, and then they now have enough power to get out of it. All that kind of stuff happens. Anyway, they get down, they fight him. Eddie ends up throwing the spear thing at Pennywise, which Beverly told him, like, it kills monsters. So he, like, was trying to, like, use his power of belief that it kills monsters. It did hurt him a lot. And he ends up, like, stabbing himself on the rocks. But it didn't kill him. He got out. Then they were, like, trying to figure out, like, okay, he's too big. He's in this, like, weird spider form. We need to get him smaller. So they're like, okay, there's a small spot in the crawl to get in here. Like, if we go there, like, he has to get small to get through. So they were trying to lead him there, and he ends up basically just blocking him. So they're like, okay, well, there's more than one way to make him small. We have to just, like, not believe that he's big. And then they're all, like, yelling, like, clown over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. This way too many times. They say clown like a bazillion times.
They cast vicious mockery.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, but they're all like clown, 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 clown. And they just keep saying it, and it's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, so they basically shrink him down to, like, he looks like the disfigured son of Immortan Joe in Fury Road. Where, like, shrinks down and he's, like, little, and then they eventually, like, just, like, pull out his heart, and then they all, like, together, like, squeeze his heart and kill it, I guess.
All of them. Eddie is not.
Well, Eddie is, he got injured, but
yeah.
So yeah, they all, like, squeeze his heart, and then he, like, disappears, and then the deadlights dissipate. And then Eddie does die. They go back to say, "Oh, Eddie, everything's great," and then he dies. Then they all go back to the quarry to go swimming, and then Richie cries, and then they make him cheerful again. And then they're all happy that it's dead.
Right.
And I won't even say it now. I'll say it. I'll say it in my low points later. But so end of movie.
Well, and Beverly ends up with Ben.
Well, that's what I'm going to go into all that shit later on.
You're not going to go into the Breakfast Club ending?
No.
So yeah, what was your, second time you've probably seen this, not the first time.
No, I watched it in the theater the first time. The first time I saw it, I was kind of disappointed.
Yes.
Because I was very excited. The first one was, like, very good. I felt it was a very good setup. Like, I felt like it really put the ball on the tee. Like, you're really just setting it up for success in the second one. And again, it was just bizarre changes that they made that I think just kind of took away from the story itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it was just the weird things that they added and the weird things that they spun around. There's a lot of muddy storylines in there. I don't know. Like, I saw it in the theater and I walked out of there like, man, that was 3 hours, and like that. It's way too long, and two, like, it's very disappointing for being as long as it is.
Yes.
But yeah, overall, I would say just disappointing.
Yeah, and this is, I'll get into what I was going to say. I'm like, before they started casting everyone, right? It's been about 27 years since the TV series. I want everyone who's, the guy who played Bill killed himself early 2000s. But I'm like, all these people are generally still making things. I'm like, I would love Seth Green to play the adult version of Richie.
I think Bill Hader crushed it as Richie. I thought he was fantastic
because we didn't know Bill Hader had the serious horror acting chops. He was always just the goofball, the comedian. And this is before Barry and stuff like that too. Like I said, I just in my head, I like it would have been perfect. I think if they brought everyone back that played the kid versions as the adult versions. But that was just my dream casting of it.
Aside from Seth Green, I don't think any of them would be good enough for a big movie like this.
I mean, the Ginger Snaps who played Bev, she still does horror movies and stuff like that. She probably could have been good.
But she does not do good horror movies.
No.
So you're not going to take somebody who does like C-level horror movies and then throw them into a AAA movie. There's no way.
Yeah. But no, I completely agree that like the adult versions weren't on par with their kid like the kid storylines. And
it's the thing that I noticed is like one individually, I thought they did great. Yes. McAvoy by himself, fantastic. Bill Hader by himself, fantastic. Jessica Chastain by herself, fantastic, right? They're like great acting. The scenes that they had, like when they're doing their individual like confrontations, fantastic. I think the big problem is when they interact with each other, it was like very forced. Right. It was like very like even like when you're talking like they're at the Chinese restaurant, like talking to each other, it was like it didn't feel right. Like it was very, very rough.
Right. I agree. I don't know if that was just a purposeful thing because they're just out of it and they're there. But like once they got to know each other, they didn't seem like the same group of people.
No. Like even when they were trying to like say like, oh yeah, we're all buddies again. We remember everything. It still felt really forced. Like these people barely know each other.
Right. But I mean, it's I think Skarsgård, you see him, more without the Pennywise garb and stuff like that. I think Skarsgård still did a fantastic job across the board.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that where they showed him out of makeup and stuff was like the backdoor pilot for the TV show they're doing.
You're right. Yeah. So, I mean, I watched it. I go, okay, this clearly isn't on par, which is a shame because everyone else was the same. The writers, the directors, Skarsgård was all the same. And, they had to do some re-effects for voices for the kids because it had been a couple of years since they made it. So there was some, CG work in there for the try to be the same age as they were before. But yeah, it just felt lacking as a story, and it should have been the stronger side too.
Yeah, and again, I mean, yeah, I'll get into it in my my low points and stuff. But yeah, it's just the things that they changed in the first one, they tried to like give you reasons why they changed them in the second one, and it just ended up being stupid.
Yeah.
Like they just totally reversed it. Like I don't understand what the hell they were talking about or why. I mean, specifically with the whole Ben Mike thing, but it's just whatever.
Yeah. Let's roll into your highlights though.
Highlights in this is again, I think their individual performances were great.
Right.
Like I said, yeah, like McAvoy, Hader, and Jessica Chastain, I think specifically are great. Like their standalone performances when they're dealing with Pennywise directly, great performances. They're great actors. They really showed through there. It's unfortunate that when they're all together, they're just not good.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, do you agree that Skarsgård was still also a highlight for you?
No. I mean, he was still great in this, and again, it's like there's they have a little bit of scenes of him like kind of like a background, not a lot, but there's enough like background to show that Pennywise was like a real person that existed.
Right.
And And again, I think a lot of that's that backdoor pilot for that TV show, which last I heard is still being made.
Coming out next year.
Yeah.
Or later this year. We'll have to discuss that when it comes out.
Yeah. So, I think that's why they were doing it. But no, I mean, he was still great in it. I mean, he had some really good scenes, really fun scenes. I think the ending was way too drawn out. I mean, like, I think he did a good job of it, but there's too much.
Yes.
Like, you could have cut a half hour into that easy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you on the highlights. I also add, I thought the adult version of Eddie was a perfect adult version of Eddie. I felt like he was Eddie.
Yeah. It was outstanding. Like I said, I mean, overall, I think Ben is probably the weakest one.
Yeah.
But it's fair because I thought he was the weakest child actor too. So like as an adult, I see it to see him as the weak character really didn't change much for me. But yeah, it's again, they had to like force in the back door of like, oh look, he liked to build this clubhouse underground, so that's why he's an architect. Like, why did you have to build this in? Why wouldn't you just keep him as the librarian character? Then you don't have to make up anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, let's continue into these low points then. But do you have other? I know you have that other low point, right?
I have a few. Yeah, if you want to.
That's cool. Get into it.
Okay, one is I know this is in both movies, but I'm specifically going to say it in this movie because they do it all the time. What is with them throwing their bikes on the ground? Like, I mean, okay, when I was a kid, I had a bike. That thing was like gold, man. Like, that thing got me from point A to point B. Like, I would never throw it on the ground. I would always put the kickstand up.
Your chain would break so much.
I know. I was like, you always put the kickstand up. You always like put it up near a wall or something to make sure it's got some protection. These kids just like literally throw their bikes in the middle of the street, and they do it all the time. They're riding bikes. They stop, throw the bike on the ground, like just leave it in the middle of the street. Like it's going to get run over, man.
Yep.
But like they constantly do it. And like in both of these movies, what I'd say, especially in 2, these kids just have no respect for these bikes. They don't deserve these bikes at all.
Especially when Bill goes back to Stephen King's pawn shop,
right,
and gets his old bike, and it's rusty, and he still just throws it everywhere.
Right, and he still gets to places and then throws it on the ground. Like, dude, like at least lean it up against something. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we talked about how their camaraderie is forced between the adults.
Yes.
You know, it's just, it doesn't feel natural at all. Again, individually, they're great. When they're together and they're interacting, not so great. And the other thing I really, really hate what they did with Bev's character. I really, really hate. They took away like in the first one, she was like, you know, she was probably the bravest of them.
Yes.
Right? Like she was the one who like stabbed Pennywise at the end. Like she was the one who jumped off the quarry first, right? She was the bravest of them. She was, you know, the strong, probably the strongest one, right?
Yes.
And in this one, they took all that away. It's gone. All she does, every freaking scene, when something bad happens, she just stands there and screams.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, when she's in her own like little, you know, confrontation with Pennywise, again, she did great. I specifically mentioned her as doing a great job, and she did, you know, showed her strength and did well there. But when she's with everybody else, her role is to just be the woman that screams.
Yep.
Like literally everybody else gets attacked. Ah, like that's it. Like, okay, you guys have already seen this shit. Like, why is she the only one screaming? Why is like, she's been through some shit. She should be okay with a lot of this stuff. She should not be like the victim and, you know, just the damsel in distress. She's past that. She wasn't that in the first movie. Why is she that now?
Right.
It just really bothered me that they just like stripped her strength away like that. Like this, that was just a huge thing. 2, like she just bounces back and forth for being a love interest with everybody. I mean, literally, like in the first movie, it's like, oh, it's Bill, and then it's like Ben, and then it's Bill again, and then the second one, it's like, oh, she like just jumps back in with Bill, even though Bill has a wife, who there was never anything wrong with the wife. I mean, in the book, there was a whole separate subplot with his wife and her husband specifically. I mean, her husband was an asshole in the book too, but in the movie, he literally just is an asshole, and then she leaves him, and then he never shows up again. like, I understand how she's ready to move on, but like, she literally just got out of a bad relationship. And she's already, ready to just jump in with Bill. And Bill just like completely forgets about his wife, apparently. Doesn't even think about her. And then she goes to Ben, right? And then she goes back to Bill. Then she goes back to Ben. She goes back to Bill. And then eventually at the end, she goes back to Ben again. Like, oh, Ben, you're the one that wrote the poem. Like, you fucking knew that. Like, at least 3 other times before that. Like, what are you doing?
Correct.
Yeah, but again, I really don't like what they did with Bev's character. Like, the only time that I like her is when she has her individual confrontations with Pennywise. Other than that, she just sucks. She just sucks. And it's not her fault. It's the writers, the people who put this thing together, just made her this generic victim / love interest character. And it's got like, they just put an adapter on her and they just like fit her in wherever they needed her to fit in. And I think it was, does not do justice to her character.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. And well, we'll throw in there I call it the Breakfast Club ending, where they're reading the letters from Stan.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's like their individual voices as kids, as adults. And Stan explained why he did what he did, that he realized that he is the weak link, that he would be the downfall of the Losers Club. Yeah, and I don't recall that from the book at all.
No, in the book, he literally just kills himself, writes it on the wall with blood. Stanley exits the story. Like, that's it. That's it. Like, he is just out. He's not there as an adult at all. No explanation is given.
Right.
But I mean, they see it on the wall in blood, and they know exactly what that means. Like, he's too scared. He will not go back.
Right. And Bowers, I mean, I don't think we need to go in as depth with his character, but even the second one, he's just like, hey, stab, I'm dead.
Right. I mean, again, it was like, I didn't even want to like mention him because he's just so pointless. Like, he's not even like a secondary antagonist. He's just like an annoyance.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with all the other low points too. Yeah. So we'll start with you. How many monsters in the dark out of 10 would you give It Chapter 2?
This one I'm going to knock it down to 6. 6 monsters in the dark out of 10.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with the 1.5. No, not even that. I'm going down to a 7. I'm 2 down for sure. Like I said, Skarsgård killed it as always, but everything else. Not everything else, but the group dynamic and the changes really knocked it down a lot.
Yeah, again, it's not a bad movie. It's just like, 1, it's too long. 2, the chemistry is not good enough for it to be that long.
Right.
And 3, it's like they did a lot of goofy changes for no reason that really takes away from the characters that I don't understand. Again, the whole Ben Mike thing, the whole Beverly thing. There's just a whole lot of dumb stuff that takes away from it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that being said, so this is a spoiler warning again for the final time for the Boogeyman. We're gonna tag team this. We both saw this at time recording a couple days ago. And I'll just give the brief synopsis of the short story that's 12 pages. Lester Billings goes in to see a therapist, talks about that his 3 kids are dead because of the Boogeyman. He kind of goes in details, and he does say the line of, I can't go to a priest because I'm not Catholic. I can't go to a lawyer because I committed no crimes. So all I have is you. He just talks about like how he didn't believe his kids that there's something in the closet. He thought they're saying claws instead of closet. and he's reporting all of this to his therapist and just kind of going into this. Like, this takes place, I think the story's written in 1980. And it was, the guy was he said he was like 35 or something like that, but looks just drastically old. Yeah. And I'll say this, the twist now, is he's very concerned that the therapist has a closet. He opens it up to say, hey, it's just, rain boots, a slicker, and a newspaper. And the twist ending in the story is he comes back and realizes there's no receptionist, that there was no one ever really there. And it was the boogeyman holding the face as a mask of the Dr. Charles Harper, as a therapist. End of story. And I was thinking about this a bit because the movie does have Lester Billings, played by Polka Dot Man, in it, and the short story almost acts more of a prequel to this movie than anything else, I would say. It's just kind of shoehorned briefly into the movie. And we'll discuss the ending of this movie when we get to it. So yeah, let's get into the movie itself, though. We are introduced to, I don't remember their names because they weren't characters in the book. It's a short story. We are introduced to the therapist Charles Harper and his two daughters. One played by Sophia, whatever her last name
Thatcher.
is.
Yes.
Sophie Thatcher from Nat from Yellow Jackets.
Also from the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes, she did ride her Power Rangers slow speed moped and was
she had robot arms.
I know. So we're introduced that their mother had died, but I think it's a month prior.
Yeah.
And they're just going back to school the first time. The dad sees patients in his house, which seems to be common in horror things. I don't know how common that actually is.
I mean, I guess it depends on how nice of a house you have and if you have children there or not. But yeah, I mean, it happens, I guess. I mean, I think it's easier to film.
Right.
So maybe it happens more often, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely a thing that happens in the real world too.
Yeah, and like I said, his oldest daughter clearly loves the mom stuff and is wearing it and goes into the closet, and picks out her mom's dress from the studio. So she is Sadie. I'm just looking at this because I had to remember. Sawyer is the youngest daughter. She is clearly afraid of the dark because she has at least 8 lamps on in her bedroom.
Oh, and she's also holding on to like a light up moon.
Correct.
Which is it's like a ball, but it's a moon and it's a light.
Yes. Yeah. So, and they're going back to the day of school, and kind of just like Sadie is getting back to knowing her friends, and they were treating her like a pariah, essentially, I would say. She just puts earbuds on so she wouldn't have to listen to everyone's condolences and sorries that she's sick of it, doesn't want to hear it. All that's going on there. So, the dad does the monster check and is, trying to figure things out with his daughters and trying to do things that his wife would do. And, they're like, okay, you're not, essentially saying you're not mom, but you never discuss it. He's clearly hiding feelings and not discussing with his kids. And maybe he should be seeing the therapist as well, which they are. His daughters are.
But yeah, basically anytime the daughters try to like have a meaningful conversation with him about what's going on, he just says, oh yeah, talk to your therapist about that. Bye.
Right. You're seeing this therapist. Yeah. which I don't necessarily, disagree. But should they discuss it together? Absolutely. With another therapist. He shouldn't be the therapist in that situation. I would say.
Well, yeah.
Meanwhile, Lester from the short story appears and essentially says all the same things from the book. And while this is going, he's like, the doctor's like, the dad's like, I need to go to the bathroom, and calls it like, this guy, said he killed his kids. He's mentally unwell. He kind of gets a drawing from the notebook that we don't see, which is surprising that we don't see it. I thought we were going to.
At this point in the film, if we saw that picture, we'd be like, okay, it's a lame kid's picture of a monster. At this point, it doesn't matter. Later on, when you have a visual representation to match it against, then you get the confirmation of, oh, yeah, it's the same thing. If we had already seen the picture, I don't think it would have hit as hard.
Yeah. So anyway, while he's doing that, Lester kind of slips away, and we find out, the Sadie went back to school. Her lunch is clearly rotten.
It's not rotten. It's just not packed well, because I'm guessing the mom probably made the lunches. So he has it looks like he just took a bunch of yogurt and put it in like a sandwich bag.
I assumed it was leftover from last time they were in school. She smelled it and had the weird face on, so maybe he just was bad.
I think she looked at it and it just looked gross.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he would give them rotten food.
Okay.
I think it would just, again, he just didn't know how to pack it or didn't know what was going in there. And because he's not communicating effectively about what's going on, I'm sure he didn't ask. He just packed up what he thought was a good lunch. And it looked like he put like a bunch of yogurt in a bag or something, whatever. But yeah.
Used yogurt in a plastic bag.
Yeah. So of course, if you put any pressure on yogurt in a plastic bag, it's going to squirt its contents everywhere, which is exactly what happens.
Yeah. So she comes home. She's very distraught. She's trying to get with her friend who moved on to new friends after a month.
I'm pretty sure that was happening before then. It's like later on, she says like, what was the last time we even hung out? And she's like, at the funeral. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't count, which is fair. But so even she couldn't even remember the last time they hung out before then. So it was obviously before that.
Yeah. But anyway, Sadie comes home to wash the dress, and she hears big old commotions as Lester's kind of moving around the house, and she finds him hanging in the closet of the mom's studio.
Well, yeah, she hears him talking, arguing with something, and then struggling with something, banging around a whole lot. And then when she finally opens the door, he's hanging there dead. So it was like, it's highly unlikely that he was like fighting with himself, but I guess it's like, not out of the question that a crazy person would argue with themselves before they killed themselves. But
yeah. So then the police come up, somehow the daughter rode the bus home, which is usually I'd say pretty unusual for someone to get driven to school and then take the bus home. I don't know. Usually bus drivers like to have the kids both ways.
Well, but he was supposed to be working.
Yeah.
So if he can drop him off in the morning because he's not working then, but then if he's working in the afternoon,
yeah,
what are you gonna
do? So then obviously the daughter's like, okay, now we had mom died and a guy died in our house. We should talk, Dad. He's like, no.
Like, nope. Go talk to your therapist. I don't want to hear about it.
Yep. I think it's just this at point in time now that Sadie starts seeing this weird veiny tree branch mold starting to be in their house, underneath where Lester killed himself. I believe, in the kitchen or dining room.
Yeah. In the room that used to be her mom's room in the closet, and just around all over the place. And this is also when the daughter is starting to actually see something come out of the closet and go under her bed and shit. Something is physically present there now. We're not getting a clear picture of what it is, but something is definitely there.
Right. And this is where we get the trailer shown where she rolls the moon under the bed and she sees a creature start coming after her. And she screams and, kind of just taking, her sister takes care of her a little bit because the dad just kind of just appears for a bit of the movie.
Well, I'm guessing dad is at the level of he has to take sleeping pills to sleep.
It has to be that because there's a lot of screaming going on in the house that no one comes out to investigate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because based on his reaction to when at night when they're sleeping, I'm guessing he's on like heavy sleeping pills to be able to sleep.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of continues, and I think even Sadie starts to see stuff here and there, like I said, with all that stuff.
Well, she's more hearing things, like she's hearing her mom's voice,
Lure,
yeah, and stuff like that, and she's like seeing her mom's like dress where it's like it looks like her. It looks like her mom is there, but when she turns the light on, it's just a dress. But like, it's very clearly there was something there. But yeah, we're seeing that whatever this thing is, it can like mimic voices.
Right, because we hear like heavy wheezing as it tries to like practice its voice.
Right.
Yeah, that's like I said that she's singing the Tour Lorelei song, which is very odd. I think, especially for this time period that we're in, like present day, for most people know that song. I don't know that song.
Well, yeah, whatever. They just picked some song that was probably the cheapest one, so they didn't have to spend money on on big money on licensing. That's why they picked some random song.
Right. But yeah, so I think Sadie then starts to do a little bit of investigation. She wants to know, all this stuff. She goes into her dad's office and is able to listen to the tape record, listen to Lester's talking. She finds a notepad underneath his desk and starts like sketching it, the old, hey, I'm going to rub the pencil over the piece of paper and the creature will be there. And it's clearly the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things.
Yeah. Well, I think basically because she was denying this whole thing, even when she had like direct experiences, she was still denying it, being like, no, it's, we're just like traumatized or whatever. I mean, she was just kind of dismissing her little sister being afraid. Like, yeah, she was comforting her, but she was also kind of like, come on, relax. Like, I know there's dramatic stuff happening, but you need to stop. But her belief in it happens when all her friends decide to like come over one night.
Right.
And they take her to her mom's old room and they like, when she goes in there, let's go see the closet where the guy killed himself. And so they go in there and then they like close the door on her and it's all dark in there. And she has a direct experience with it. Like there's no like denying what she saw. Like this is now something here. She didn't get a good look at it, but she knew something was there. And that's when she started looking further into it. And that's when she finds that drawing and she shows the little girl because the little girl has seen it better than she has. And she's like, yeah, that's it.
Right. But yeah, she goes to the Billings house. It seems dilapidated. Murderers written on there. All like whole bunch of contraptions of like, lack of a better word, ghost hunting equipment. Pointing at the closets, like a closet door being open, being triggered to take a Polaroid. She looks at the Polaroid and sees someone behind her, and it's Lester's wife, who is clearly not well. Has, I would say, 1,000 candles in the house at least.
Yeah, you can imagine how hard that would be to keep all those lit.
You're right. So yeah, she's going through. She's like, "Hey, this is what happened. This is true. And she sees that the mold and veiny tree branch mold all over the house, and she goes, "Yeah, what did Lester do? Oh, yeah, he brought it to your house now. So that sucks. Stay alive. See ya."
Right? Yeah, not my problem.
Right. He's like, "I got my own problems." But yeah, then there's another attack at the house where, like I said, I was trying to figure out the video game that Sawyer was playing that, after the girl's there, that she gets attacked and viciously thrown into the TV to the point where she has like a huge ass lump on her head.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I should mention before this that, during the Are You Afraid of the Dark type things, they see the therapist who's like, okay, I'm throwing this blinking red light and it's slowly going to get into the dark. So you realize there's nothing to fear, and, incidences were there, but this is before Sadie believed her. So anyway, she's back, the Sawyer is in the hospital being taken care of. And Sadie confronts her dad. He's like, oh, this is the room where your mother was taken. And they're talking about like, hey, all this stuff is true. He's like, are you high? I smelled pot on you. It's like, no, she clearly didn't smoke enough pot to be high. But she's like, no, you're wrong. I have to end this. You don't believe me. You need to stay here. And she just kind of goes back to the house. And she's talking to Lester's wife. She's like, she's contacted by Lester's wife. It's like, hey, I know how to kill it. I know how to stop it. She goes there, meets her. She's like, all we gotta do is this. And like handcuffs or zip ties her to the wall. She's like, all right, you're gonna be the bait. I have this trap that's usually used for scaring off bears, but there's live ammunition in this. And let's turn off all the lights. And the creature does come. We get a really not clear picture, but more of the creature is being seen. And, it's shot and seems to be dead, but it is bleeding. And then Lester's wife is like, okay, I need to finish this off. Like, yeah, it's dead. And no, she gets brutally, savagely torn in half. What do you say?
Yeah. So one of the things that annoys me is like, she's been lighting candles in this hallway for how long, right?
Right.
Like this thing, like again, all the notes on the wall and all the talking and stuff, this thing has clearly been in her house for a long time.
Yes.
And when it walked towards her, the candles just go out.
Yep.
When it's anywhere near it. So like
it envelops in darkness.
Why would she have not understood that these candles are completely useless before this point? Why would she bother lighting candles knowing that they can just blow them out like that?
Right.
Like what kind of what a huge waste of time.
Yeah. But the important part of this is that Sadie realizes that it does bleed, and it can be hurt or at least killed potentially. Meanwhile, by the way, we should also mention that she talked to her therapist about, what happens after death. And, she's telling her, gets her mom's lighter that she used for pot. It's like, all right, move the flame to the left if you're here.
Okay, to be fair, that wasn't from her therapist. That was some YouTube video that she found.
Well, I'm saying she asked the therapist about afterlife stuff, and so she looked up the video on YouTube of how to test it.
The therapist did not tell her
right
about that. It was some YouTube shit.
Yeah, if she concentrated hard enough that she would be able to feel her mom's presence.
Right.
Like I said, I have to say that because it comes into play later. She realizes that her dad and sister are home. She's like, okay, you have to get out. It's there. They about to turn around, and nope, they get dragged back into the house, and we don't see them again until Sadie comes back, goes in the house, and she sees blinking lights coming out of the closet. And, somehow during all of this, Sawyer was able to get an extension cord to plug in the Christmas lights that are constantly blinking, which have, in my opinion, the loudest blink possible when changing light colors.
Yeah, but yeah, of course, did not hit any other light switches in the house on her way doing any of that.
Correct. And the dad is in the basement. So like, okay, we're going to go there and go save dad. They kind of find him and like how would you describe how it's feeding on him? Just like drawing out his essence?
Yeah, I guess so. It does. Yeah, it does like a whole, like I guess Shang Tsung like soul sucking thing.
Right. Which, okay, I sorry, I should have prefaced it. The beginning of this movie is a toddler in a crib, and in the book, the neck gets snapped. And they said that the kid died from SIDS when there's, back broken and blood everywhere. That's not.
Died from SIDS when they very clearly showed blood splattering on the wall.
That's not how SIDS
Yeah,
works.
SIDS is not like a explosion.
Right. So anyway, they start kind of battling the boogeyman. It starts feeding off of her essence, and then Sadie stabs it. And they're like trying to use the lighter and a aerosol can to help kind of set it on fire, kill it by light. But she runs out of aerosol or hairspray, whatever that was. And then like, okay, and then just starts soaking it in paint thinner, and it's like holds up the flames, like, aha, and then the flame moves to the left and lights the creature on fire.
Yep.
Implying that the mother is there in some supernatural element. The house burns down. They all have a meeting with the other therapist, discussing everything. Everything's to be a happy family. She goes back in there, and the closet's open a little bit, and she closes it. End of movie.
Well, she goes back in there because the therapist says, "Oh, can you wait for 1 second? I want to talk to you about something."
Right.
And so then she goes back in there, sees that the closet's open, and closes it. And the therapist comes out like, "Can I help you with something?" So like, it obviously was not the therapist that said it.
Right.
Implying that the bogeyman is still around.
Yeah, but not as explicit in the book. In the book,
no,
it's not as bad of an ending as the book. Well, like I said, we'll get into that. So, I'll just get into the first thoughts of this because this isn't a rewatch because we just seen it once. I know I'm going to watch it again when it comes to streaming with the wife. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't determined if I'm going to watch it again at this point. To me, it is, they said they went through some rewrites, and some, scene changes, and it was brought down to a PG-13 movie. And I think it's a very apparent PG-13 movie. And, the more I think about it is they could have done more like the story of the book. I think it would have been better if they stuck to the story and expanded with Lester Billing and his 3 kids instead of focusing on the therapist in the movie. And it just seemed like I want to say generic Monster in the Dark movie. What about you?
Yeah, I'd say mediocre. It's just, it's a very mediocre, it's a very generic, very typical, just, goofy horror movie. There's nothing special about it. It's like there's nothing all that interesting happening. It's like a bunch of different horror movie like cliches just kind of all wrapped up into one story. It's like barely an original story.
Yes. And I think it suffers for that. I don't see any reason why they couldn't have adapted, like I said, the story at all. But the creature looked like a mix of, I would say, Antlers and Barbarian, or even Smile. I don't know how, and the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things.
Yeah, or like Slender Man in there probably too.
Yeah. I know. I feel like this would have been. I think they should have gone with the less is more approach to the creature, to the boogeyman itself.
They did a pretty good job with not showing you what it looked like, really.
Yeah.
I mean, even up until you see the picture that the kid drew, like you still haven't seen it at that point. I mean, I don't think you see it until at least like 2/3 of the way through the movie, and even then, it's just pieces of it. You don't get to see like the whole thing until the very end. I mean, I think it's faithful, at least in a creature respect.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any other first thoughts on it other than just being like this almost went to our PG-13Y category.
Yeah, it's just a very generic, boring level horror movie. Like I said, there's nothing special about it. I can't recommend it to watch. It's just there's nothing going on.
I have a strong feeling this is going to be one of our bottom 5s for 2023 list when we do it at the end of this year.
I mean, it's possible. It depends on how many terrible movies you make me watch.
Let's just go into our highlights for this movie. The acting wasn't bad by the main family. The friends were.
I'd say it was passable. I mean, I think Sophie Thatcher did a good job.
Yeah,
I do like her a lot. Everybody else was just kind of there. I mean, yeah, they did their job. I wouldn't say anybody was bad.
Right. Yeah, and atmospherically, it's okay. But it's just so reliant on jump scares, and honestly, the trailer gave away most of them.
I don't know. Yeah, jump scares don't really affect me anymore. It's more like things in the dark will scare me, but jump scares won't.
Yeah, and this is, I've said this before in other places too. It's just like jump scares isn't horror. You can build a great atmospheric movie and not have to rely on jump scares all the time. And this is very reliant on them. But yeah, let's kind of go into our low points. As I don't think, unless you have any other highlights.
I did like the creature's design.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it looked pretty cool. If you looked at how its mouth was, is that there was actually like, instead of having a tongue, it had like 2 arms that would come out and grab things. But like when it like retracted in, the fingers like acted kind of like the teeth in its skull.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I thought it was, fun looking, interesting in the way that it worked. So the effects of the creature I actually liked. And yeah, I mean, other than, I thought Sophie Thatcher did a good job. But yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah. Let's get into these low points because there's a few.
Well, yeah, I mean, number 1 is the mom ghost.
Yeah.
It's so generic. I mean, how lame is that? You know what I mean? But it's not only is it lame, but like, we never even met the mom.
Correct.
We never even saw the mom. Like, at least with this kind of movie, like you might have like an opening scene where like the mom is like a good mom or something, like to show that they cared for these children. Now we don't even know if the mom was a good mom or not.
Well,
we have no idea.
She sang the song to her on the videotape.
To a baby. Of course she's going to sing a song to a baby. We don't know what she was like for the other 10 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, she could have been fucking terrible. We don't know if she's a good mom or not. So, like, her being obsessed with her mom's ghost, like, who gives a shit? We don't know this person. Why do we care?
Right.
Like, I get that you're obsessed with your mom, but, like, we don't know if she's a good person or not. Like, why do we care?
Well, I think they had that it felt like very shoehorned in.
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about before, that's probably what they rewrote, is they gave it a lighter, more upbeat ending with the whole mom ghost bullshit.
And I think it would have been better with, with Sadie being a strong woman versus relying on the flame going left. Like, they were clearly handling themselves with the boogeyman, and they could have continued with that without any extra ghost related things.
Right.
And I think that really hindered the movie.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a couple of things that I think are really dumb. One is, okay, if you're the boogeyman, right?
Yep.
And you latch on to like broken people and then like go back to their house to like kill their whole family.
Yes.
What more perfect place could you have to have a nest or home base than a psychologist who works out of his home?
Yeah.
Why would you ever kill the psychologist? It's literally like you have a feeding ground. All of these people coming in trying to get help are all broken people that you can easily go take over.
Yes.
And then once you're done killing that family, you come back. I mean, yeah, eventually he's probably going to be out of work because all of his people die. But I mean, at least for a while, you would have a feeding ground. Like, it's obviously intelligent, right? It obviously understands language and stuff like that. Like, it should understand that this is stupid to kill these people. You should use them as a feeding ground.
Yes.
2, they are very, very, very selective with how its teleportation works. Okay, because like it seems like it can teleport between any dark space, right? I mean, it's teleporting between houses. It's teleporting into the therapist's office. I mean,
Yes.
It can teleport everywhere, anywhere that there's a dark area next to someone that it's trying to kill, right? Well, like at the end of the movie, all of a sudden it can't anymore. Like it's being attacked. It's clearly the tables are turning on it. The whole basement is dark, and it chooses to like try to fight them head on for no other reason other than to let them win.
Well, you'd even argue that the teleportation has to happen in a closet because that seems to be its point of entry. So why go, to your point, why go into the basement where there's no closet? It has no escape plan.
Well, it's not just a closet. There's multiple times in the movie where it's just a dark area.
Yeah, that's
like when
true.
she's playing a video game, she's in a living room. It just pops up behind her because it's dark because she doesn't turn a light on in the room, even though she's already been attacked by this thing once. So she uses the light of the PlayStation. Like, what if there's a cut scene and it cuts to black? You know what I mean? Now there's no light at all. Why would you not turn a light on in the room? Anyway, but I'm saying, like, when she was in the basement before, it made an appearance. Okay, when she was in that other house and it came out, it just came out of the dark area in the hallway. It didn't come out of a closet. So it's not specifically in a closet. It's from another dark area. When they were in the therapist office, it just appeared on the ceiling because it was dark. It doesn't need to be in a closet. It just needs to be in a dark area, and it can apparently teleport between them because these places are not near each other, and there would be lights between there. They would not be able to, ride on the back of the car or something. So it can clearly teleport. And then at the end, when they're like, things are definitely turning against it, okay? Like, you could easily, like, okay, I'm just going to out, right? I'm just going to jump out, jump back in the dark, and go find somebody else. It decides to fight them head on for no reason.
Correct.
Just very stupid. Because this thing has apparently been living for like millennia or whatever.
Since the dawn of man.
Yeah, since the dawn of man. But yeah, no one has ever lit it on fire before. I highly doubt that.
Well, they explain in the movie like, oh, man created fire to stop it.
Right.
That was like a line in the movie.
Right. Like, okay. So how did no one else ever catch it on fire?
Right.
Like in the thousands of millions of years. Or not millions, I guess it'd be tens of thousands of years. No one has lit the thing on fire. Come on.
Right. Any other little points from you?
I mean, yeah, but they're none worth mentioning.
To go off of you with Sawyer playing a video game, yes. You are clearly afraid of the dark. Your room is clearly a light haven. Yet everyone keeps putting themselves into the dark. Constantly.
Right. Well, like that house, it's like they don't have any lights in the hallway at all.
None.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, they're trying to say, oh, it's an old house. It doesn't matter. Old houses have lights in the hallway. If there's no lights in the hallway, put it around a freaking lamp.
Yes.
You got like dressers and bookshelves in the hallway, put a fucking lamp on top of it.
Yeah. And hey, I'm going to use the light of the refrigerator. Well, okay. Well, you could have turned the light on. I understand it's middle of the night, but clearly your dad's on something.
Right.
You don't have to be sneaky through the house. Yeah, they they keep putting themselves into the dark situations, knowing that something's there. Absurd. And the point I thought that maybe they're trying to get with the closets, because they're always talking about like, oh, every time something happened with the boogeyman is the closet was slightly open. So I think that was the idea with the ending scene, with the closet being slightly open, which they don't really get into as they should, because that's kind of like the established lore from the short story.
Well, and again, but they don't even follow that, because there's several
correct.
times where the door is closed and it opens it.
Yes.
Like multiple times. So it's not even like leaving it open is the invitation of it in. It's like, it doesn't matter if you even close your closet, it's just going to kick it open.
Right, which it did. But I'm saying like its way of getting out is it goes back through the closet, but doesn't close the door all the way when it's done with its victims. And I think honestly they should have kept in a more outright thing, like this. She should have seen her therapist, be the boogeyman without a maybe subtle nod to a potential future. It should have been a worse ending than what it was, because we like bad endings.
Well, I mean, yeah, with this level of movie, you're not going to get a good bad ending.
Right. And I think that's why, well, especially with, I don't think most PG-13 horror movies have bad endings. It has to end onto the lighter note. And I feel like the ending was changed for audiences.
Yeah, like you can leave it open to like, leave it open for a sequel. You can do that, but you can't have a bad ending where like everybody dies.
Right. And I think I really feel like that's what part of the rewrites was as well, is people needed to feel happy at the end, and it felt like just a studio interference with it.
Yeah, probably what it was is some studio guy was like, the Boogeyman, okay? The Boogeyman, that's like a little kid's scary movie. We should make it more like a kid-friendly movie.
Right.
It's basically what it felt like.
Yes. And like I said, there are some good PG-13 horror movies, but like it felt tamed, it felt watered down, it felt very studio interfered to me for all that. And that's kind of like my biggest complaint with it is that like you can almost feel that part of it.
Yeah, whenever you get a lot of studio interference, things end up being bland and uninspired and just mediocre. And that is this movie.
Yes, which is a shame. Which is a shame. It really, really is. That like it's it's not like his other short stories where we have like 15 children of the corns. This could have been a one and done. And I think it should be, honestly. But there's so much more stuff that you could have drawn on and made it an R-rated movie. Because not that I want to see kids getting killed on screen or babies. I'm not saying that. But it could have been so much more than what there's more potential to the story that really was not executed well enough. That all being said, let's get into our number of monsters in the dark out of 10. Have it been only the first watch, and I said I probably will watch it again with the wife. But as of that point in time, though, I'm probably going down to, I don't know, 3.5 out of Monsters in the Dark out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, I'm close to that. I would say 3 Monsters in the Dark out of 10. It's very boring, very generic, very uninspired.
Right, and it really felt like it's going to just kind of fade into the ether. Like it's not going to be something that people talk about. I feel
right.
It will get lost into the list of horror movies, unfortunately. That's probably where it will stay.
Right.
Maybe in 10 years we can get a good remake of it. Who knows? And if we're doing our podcast by then still too, we'll go back and reuse the remakes. But yeah, it's just, this goes into the PG-13Y category for me. As I said before, I guess it's good for, I don't know, it's not even scary. Like, if I saw this when I was 13, I'd be like, okay, this is boring.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the movie's just boring in general. I don't think it matters how old you are.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was disappointed with it, to say the least.
Yeah, it's fair.
From all the hype that was there, like I felt like it had as much hype as Barbarian did, as Smile did, and Smile didn't have a good ending. Barbarian did, but Smile didn't, and it felt like more authentic horror to me. Those movies did.
Yeah, no, I didn't see. I mean, I remember the trailer dropping, but I didn't see any hype for this at all.
It is one of those that the stupid hype for the show, like the audience reactions to it, like people screaming and stuff like that. Maybe just because we're jaded, but I'm like, I don't even think the jump scares were that noteworthy, because predictable completely. I think you're able to see what was going to happen and when. So, all right. Well, I think that's about wraps up this episode. Do you have anything else to add?
Nope.
All right. So, from one Boogeyman remake to another, Reject the Devil as Free from Hell, Go to the House of 1,000 Corpses. So yeah, we'll be going into a director spotlight with Rob Zombie's Firefly trilogy next week. I'm excited. We discussed this a little before the episode. I've seen The House of 1,000 Corpses and Devil's Rejects quite a number of times. And Free from Hell, I'm excited to rewatch this because we watched it together when it came out, well before the podcast, and we haven't visited since. And to say the least, it's a confusing mess, but we'll get there next week with it. So yeah, it's arguably, in my opinion, two of these movies are Rob Zombie's finest works that he's made to date. But we'll get into that next time. So until then, remember, we watch bad movies, so you don't have to. And this is Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.